Today, I am talking to a young, energetic business lawyer who is passionate about helping organizations, people, and businesses stay aware of legal pitfalls and help them prevent or mitigate risk in that direction. She is one who I consider to be an advocate for self-improvement and self-accountability. Her name is Josephine, and I hope you get value from this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Hafiz. I'm really excited and I'm humbled and honored to be on this show today. My name is Seidakumo Josephine Yeiyah, and I'm a legal practitioner. I specialize in business law. Yes, business law is wide, from incorporation to compliance issue to corporate governance to data protection. So although I have background in litigation, property consultancy, due diligence, consulting, conducting due diligence in property transaction and perfecting of title. So that's where I started. When I finished law school 2017, that was when I was called to the Nigerian bar, and I served in Akwa Ibom State. So when I started working in a law firm, right, where we focus on litigation, because the advice that we got was that when we are leaving, we should not just jump into the corporate world or going out, because as lawyers, we can either work with a law firm where you do litigation, that is dispute resolution. Dispute resolution includes litigation, includes mediation, includes arbitration, and all of that. So that's dispute resolution. Litigation is usually the last resort if all the other alternative dispute resolution actually do not resolve the matter. So I have a little bit of litigation background. Transitioning into business law, some persons are particularly focused in intellectual property law, some in just data protection law, because law is wide.
You have an interesting background with the practice of law during your NYSC days. You're very, very much embedded and very much involved in practicing. But why did you transition into business law? What interests you to transition into business law? In particular, focusing on tech law, compliance, data protection, and corporate governance.
So for me, wanting business law is part of my passion. It's a gradual journey. I reflect, what do I love? Like from my secondary school days, I love and I cherish innovation and creativity, and anything that allows me to apply myself creatively. I love quantitative reasoning. I love math, word problem. So anything creative, and I love literature. So when I went to study law, I just said, let me go and study law. I did not know why I went to study law. I said, well, I like story, I like people. But when I started studying law, I loved it. It was relatable, but then there was no clear vision of the kind of practice that I wanted. So if I'm talking to a younger lawyer now, I'll be able to explain and tell them that, okay, this is what you should do, this is what you should know, what is your vision. So I just went in and started studying law, right? But in the course of it, because I used to reflect, there's some things that comes to me naturally that I just like intellectual property. Like I told you, I said I love innovation and creativity. So when the option for us to take intellectual property law came up, I loved it. I just jumped it because it was talking about how to protect people's intellectual property and safeguarding their creativity. So when you look at tech law, business law, and I now look at that area of law that actually speaks to these things. So I'll say it's me reflecting on my passion, on the area that I love, or things that I love, and how I can apply it. So it's just look at what interests you. What is your passion? What do you love? It can lead you to, let me look at the law in this area. So that's one thing I know that, but it took me years. I started with litigation, started that, but in the course of it, I started discovering myself. In fact, I took a course. I'm a associate member of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. We call ourselves corporate governance professionals. You know, I have alternative to take a course in arbitration. I have alternative to take a course in other things, but I decided to choose Chartered Secretaries and Administrators. Why? So when you have something in you, you begin to make decisions based on your passion. So it was clear. So as I grew, as I experienced, I began to get clarity that, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the area of law I want to focus on.
This is amazing, because based on what you just said, you have love for innovation and creativity. You have a knack for learning, consistent learning.
Yes.
And consistent learning is one of the things that would help people to grow. But one thing that a lot of young people do not have is mentorship. Well, because during the process of you trying to discover yourself, and then you now discover that you have love for creativity and innovation, then you fell in love with ICT, then you now fell in love with business law and all of those things. Now, a lot of young people don't know that. What do you think is the most important thing that these young people should focus on? Because mentorship is very important. What do you think they should focus on to actually get themselves aligned with discovering themselves?
Whatever you are doing now, apply your art. Be intentional. There's a way we can do things and not be intentional about it. And if you're not intentional about something, you won't get results. Be intentional, be consistent. You will fail. Okay, so let me talk about being intentional about what you do. Let's say you have a tax side. Why do people say, okay, they say you have worked in this particular area? What do you know? If you are not intentional, if you don't look at the process and the procedures, the requirements, intentionally, that experience might not be part of you. And that's why you say they will say some people went to school, but school did not pass through them because they were not intentional about that stage. So for me, intentionality is key. Another thing is consistency. It might take a while. So for me, be consistent. Even if you are not consistent, you are failing, keep doing it. Over time, your consistent stamina will be stronger, will grow stronger, you'll become more consistent. Be intentional about where you are. Don't say because you want to achieve this, you are pursuing a particular goal, you are not intentional. Because where you are, you can make value. Okay, you want to work with a big law firm, you're working with a small law firm. Be intentional, do your best. Because what you learn, you begin to learn a lot of things, transferable skills, begin to pay attention to details, So that's what I'll say. I'll tell them, be intentional. Always reflect. Ask yourself question. What are my strengths? You might not be able to answer them in one day. Reflect. What are those things that are spontaneous about? Be intentional about the tasks at hand. Then be consistent.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to do to yourself is to be completely honest, and being very honest with your journey. Saying that
exactly
you were not consistent from the beginning, but as you grew, as you started to learn, as you started to build discipline, you started getting your consistency started getting higher. Your threshold for consistency and for self-discipline and for learning started getting higher. And then being intentional. That's really, because a lot of young people are very much distracted these days. Kind of the distraction is now letting them off the rail of focus on the goal itself, the task at hand. And so, this that you sell is one of the things that is pretty much important. And let's talk about the business law. So as a business lawyer, there will be some misconceptions people have about tech law, compliance, data protection, and corporate governance. So what are the common misconceptions that people have in all of this field as a business lawyer? What have you noticed over the years?
In this part of the world, we have the tendency to underestimate the significance of legal advice services. As long as it's not a tangible product, it's not something that you can collect. They don't see that it's important. You hear people say, is it not a lawyer? What would they do? Is it not just go and talk? They overlook a lot of things. They don't know the importance of legal until they enter into legal pitfalls. Legal compliance, corporate governance compliance, data protection. You understand? All those things are like preventive measures. If you do them and you adhere to all these requirements, industry specific regulations, it is prevention. You are preventing, you are fortifying your business against lawsuits, sometimes reputational damage, penalties. So a lot of things against court cases. So if you take legal advisory important from the foundation of your business, it will prevent a whole lot of things. We have seen a lot of cases where, and you know something, that your image as a company is very, very important. Let's say you are not complying with data protection laws, and you just put it on the internet. Maybe the Nigeria Data Protection Commission (NDPC) says, "Oh, these companies, they are not compliant with data protection laws and blah blah blah." They now put them. There's a breach. Do you know what will happen? It can even affect the stock market. Let's say you are a company that you have listed, that people buy. They will just this company, they are not serious. So your reputation matters. Your goodwill matters. Also, people, they don't know the importance of these things. If an investor right now wants to invest in your business, they'll look at you. They would audit your company, whether you are compliant with all the regulatory compliance, whether you take into consideration ESG, corporate governance, whether you treat your employers well. Those are the things that you look at before they invest. Whether you put into consideration diversity and inclusion. Do you understand? Whether you are transparent in your business operation, they look at these things and they say, okay, they have good work ethics, they have good corporate governance structure, they are compliant, all this. They know that when they invest their money, you will not do something that will make them lose their money, because investors are risk takers. And if the business is not profitable, they lose their money. So they want to ensure that you are doing the right thing. You are not doing something that would affect the business. So if business owners know these things, they will take legal compliance seriously. They will take legal advisory services seriously, because it prevents you from getting into trouble. But what we love is when we get into trouble in this country. For me, it's a win-win. I'll say, if you don't miss me at the beginning of the transaction, let's say some persons that have even got to buy the land before they'll come and remember lawyer, come and draft agreements. I'll tell them that, okay, I'll ask you, did you do this? Did you conduct your legal due diligence? You know the roots of title. Who bought? Do you know the land? Whether is it a land that is under government acquisition? Who was it? What is the chain of title? Is it broken? Well, if you say no, I'll say, I will tell you that these are the things that you do. But if you now insist that, in fact, I'm being reluctant to drop an agreement for such person. I remember somebody came to me recently. He said, oh, he wants to understand how to structure his business and all of that. And I told him that if you want to structure your business, there are a lot of things that you need to put into consideration. I think I've discussed some of them on my YouTube page. There are a lot of things that you need to talk about: ownership, you talk about equity, you talk about exit strategy, you talk about profit, you talk about so many things. You now said, you talk about your financial projection. Do you have a business plan? No business plan. What's the financial projection? No financial projection. So how do you know the capital that your company needs to run? It is when you know you have the financial projection, you know the capital that you need, you know how much you need. That's when you now know how do you now want to raise this capital? Do you want it to be, you want to raise it during your incorporation when you are setting up the business from the scratch? How much you want to raise there? So it will now determine your share capital. You want to raise it as good capital before you just come and say, I give this person 15%. what is the legal basis for you giving somebody 15% of your company? No financial projection, you don't have a financial analysis on your team, you just dash them, and then your numbers are not right. That's like some businesses fail. I can't close my eyes when I see that the foundation, that's something that you need to do before you get to this place. You need to conduct due diligence before you say, lawyer, come and draft agreement for me. It's like you start from the beginning, from the foundation, so that everything is right. You try as we cannot completely prevent issues, legal issues, but we can minimize our risk. So if they understand these things, they understand the importance of these things, but they don't, maybe it's exposure. There's a company I consult for, a tech company I consult for. This guy takes compliance seriously, and that's because I want to say that because he works with companies, foreign companies. So I think he has been able to imbibe their culture of compliance. But in this part of the world, we don't take legal advisory services seriously. And if you look at companies that have been existing, why are they still standing? These are the things that they put in check. So many just reminds me, you see people, I remember somebody was posting something, real estate, invest, you get ROI of 58%. Then even bank does not promise people that kind of return on investment. Bank, CBN regulates the interest rates. What is your basis? They don't put into consideration the inflation rate. They don't do so many discounting things. When I took a course of corporate financial management, I was like, wow, I'm so glad I did this. I was like, yeah. So people don't have that thing, that background. One of the things that make business fail, lack of proper financial knowledge, lack of legal advice. So they just take things for levity. They are not proactive. This is when they now get into problem. That's when you now start going to court. You now be giving lawyers stress. Sometimes when you have court case, you'll not be able to sleep.
Okay, so a major misconception that people have is kind of parallel across board. Like until they get in trouble, they don't know that they don't know the importance of a legal practitioner in all angles, at all levels. Say, for example, you're very right when you talked about investors wanting to know how compliant you are as a company. Say, for example, as a fintech startup, an investor would want to know if you are compliant with data protection, if you are compliant with your regulator, your central bank, if it is in Nigeria, the Central Bank of Nigeria, if it is in Ghana, the Bank of Ghana, BOG. So if it is in America, the Federal Reserve, and all of those things. So if you're not compliant, if you're not licensed, if you're not compliant on all levels, there's no point that an investor would say, okay, let me put my money in this business. And then people rush steps, people rush process. So you have to do one thing before you jump to the other, because if you do not understand that, well, a child will crawl before it starts walking, and a child will walk before it starts running. So everything is in stages and everything has process. And that's quite commendable because you understand the misconception and you dealt with it over time. So because you're a business lawyer and having to focus on all of the specific angles of business law, domains of business law, what is your day like? Your typical day as a business lawyer?
Well, challenge, I love what I do, right? I love challenges. In fact, I'll say that I've read more than the way I read when I was in university. Because as a lawyer, you have signed up to a lifetime of reading. Because there will be new laws. You will read. You pick out what your client needs to do to be compliant or what they need not to do. You read. So you have to keep reading. So that's one of the challenges. So you have signed up for a lifetime of reading. You can't just slack in that area. You want to be prepared to meet up. And look at, there's so many. Let's say you're in the fintech. You're talking about customer due diligence. You're talking about KYC. We're talking about CBN regulation. We're talking about SEC. We're talking about so many things. And then you sit down, you have to now go through those laws. We are talking about product compliance. Depends on the products your technical the company you are advising is doing. Depending on their business, you are looking at whether the product is compliant with regulatory this. And that you don't have one regulatory, but for tech data protection is very important because we are in the online space, online transaction, and we are open to so many risks: cybercrime, unauthorized access, data breach, and which can lead to a whole lot of loss. We are talking about AML and CFT compliance, anti-money laundering laws, especially in the financial industries. So you want to know, you have thresholds where you have to report certain things to a particular this thing. You have to compare your KYC, where if it is a politically exposed person, what are the things that you need to do? So it's a whole lot.
It for a lawyer, a business lawyer like you have to read, you have to study and fish out and interpret laws and fish out what the client needs to do. Sometimes access to information, sometimes challenges to have access to even your clients, right? If they don't know the level of urgency of the information they need to provide. And that is quite challenging. It's also interesting at the same time because it comes with the job. And I quite commend you for loving your job, as you said. It's a very important thing. So in your experience, what are some pressing legal issues that businesses, especially the ones in the tech industry, need to be aware? I mean, they need to be aware of to mitigate this.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, it depends on the stage of you are as a company. But let's say you are starting from the beginning, you have the ideation, your idea in the ideation stage, you're talking about it. Something I love about tech is that the legal profession is also creative. We follow precedent.
Okay.
But tech, innovation does not really follow precedent. That's something they call disruptive technology. You want to shake up the old things and bring in a new one, or you want to improve upon a new one. So you go, okay, how do I make this thing better? But in law, if you want to change a law, you have to go through the National Assembly. You have to do first reading, second reading, do. Before they will now enact the law before you can start doing it. But in tech, you understand, you don't need to enact. You just sit down with your engineers. Okay, this is what we want. This is the pain points that we have identified. This is what we need. This is the pain point we identified. So how do we solve this pain point? Then you sit down, you talk with your product manager. You look at the features of the product you want to do. You test it. You build it. You test it, and you do that. So now you need to look at product compliance separately. You also need to look at ownership, structure, company compliance. So let's say you have the idea now, and the next thing is you need people to come together to actually bring this idea into fruition. And then you now start talking about founder and co-founder. You need to regulate your relationship with your founder and your co-founder. Who gets what? What is your duty? How do we share the ownership of the business? So you talk about structure, talk about ownership structure, you talk about the best structure that you want to do. Then you look at the law. Do we have regulatory bodies? Do we have regulations that guide this particular business I want to do? You look at the people involved. Let's say you are doing business with a foreigner in Nigeria. There's a minimum share capital that you should consider. Like if you invest in a foreigner and a foreigner wants to own part of the business in Nigeria, your minimum share capital is 100 million shares. If you are in fintech, depending on your this thing, you have minimum share capital that you should before you say you want to register in fintech. And we have the Nigerian Startup Act that was passed 2023. There is a structure. There are elements that should be contained in your articles of association. So all these things has to be there in the beginning. There, you now talk about your product. your products, especially when you're going to be using data, you're talking about data impact assessment. You're supposed to conduct a data impact assessment to know the risk that is associated with that product. There's something they call data protection by design. Do you get? So as you are designing the product from the beginning, you need to consider compliance. Just imagine you are finished designing the product and I say, okay, you need to do this. It might be difficult, but what if you have that knowledge from the beginning that, okay, we need to consider this particular, of course, you don't have to, when you are releasing your MVP, it's not compulsory you release all the features with it, you want to test the market, you want to see how it goes. But even with your MVP, so you need to consider product data compliance by design by incorporating a lot of things, like let's say consent management. Before you can use people's data, you need to consider they need to give their consent, and then you are looking at developing a feature that shows that these people have given their consent. You look at organizational structures, look like technical structures. You are looking at pseudonymization. You are looking at through factor authentication. So you are looking at, let's say you are not in the fintech that you have to do KYC. Maybe it's not your company that you don't have that. You want to look at integration. You want to integrate a product, a company that does KYC. You're looking at, you want to get the API, you want to have access to it and integrate that feature to your own this thing. They look at third-party processing agreements. So you look at whether you're a data processor or a data controller, you look at the obligation under the law, what you should do. So it's the foundation. Those are the things that you look at when you are building. That's the foundation. So it depends on your stage. Let's say you now got to the stage of where you want to start getting investors. You consider shareholders agreements. You consider so many things. So for tech startup, ownership, structure, governance, then now before we now start, like I said, product compliance. You want to ensure that your product is compliant with the law. Then you want to ensure that your relationship with your fellow co-founder is compliant. You want to also understand the structure that you have actually taken the best structure. Then you now come to people that are working with you.
This things that you're saying that they should look at are the things that are very core to building a solid product that is compliant and even a solid company. Can you share like a particular challenging case that you worked on related to tech law or corporate governance? So, and then how did you navigate through it? And then what are the key takeaways from that experience?
I remember when I wanted to release the MVP of this particular product, because they started building the product before I came in. So of course I helped in registering the trademarks of the product. Then when it comes to one of the things that gave me tough time was when we were about to register our patent, get patent for that particular process. The whole documentation of the patent specification, the diagram. I had to work hand in hand with the engineers, right? Then the data protection impact assessment that we need to conduct, we had to sit down, we had to break down the whole product and see why we need a particular data, what are the risks. So I had to talk, it was a meeting with the engineers and the product managers. Okay, why do you need this? Why do you need that? So it was breaking down everything. Okay, this is why we need this. This is why we need that. Okay, this is what we can do. This is what we cannot do.
I think it is safe for me to think you are someone who loves challenge, and we can throw challenges at you, love challenges at you, and then you'll be okay because you love what you're doing. And on the other side, as someone that is very, deeply involved in corporate governance, what do you believe are the essential elements of effective governance within a company?
Now, a lot of companies fail because of corporate governance decline. You know why? Because you understand that when you talk about company, a company has its own personality.
Yes.
And the liability of the investors are limited to their share contribution to that company. It also means that nobody will be held responsible. Each director or each investor will not be held responsible. They will not be personally liable for any claim that arise from that business. What they would just lose is their investment. But if they have other personal property somewhere, it will not be attached to it. And sometimes, so what all these directors, we have shareholders. Like investors will not run your business for you. It is the directors that are involved in the day-to-day activities of the business, right? So, let's say a director does not have, he didn't even invest in the business. He's not an investor. He's not a shareholder because it's not compulsory. It's not compulsory that a director is a shareholder. And it's not compulsory that a shareholder is a director. You can just invest your money and go and be a shareholder and just go and employ somebody to be a director. And that is why they always advise that one of the principle of corporate governance is to attach incentive to performance. Tell them that, if they perform this thing, do this thing, and they achieve this is what they will get. Well, however, there's also a downside to it because the investors, the shareholders, they are the risk takers. They call them the risk takers because they are investing. And when you are investing your money as an investor, and that's why they take their time before they invest. You can lose your money and you can make your money. If the business succeeds, you lose your money. Nobody is going to pay. In fact, in the order of settlements, when you are doing liquidation, the investors, they are the last people. If you are about to sell off the asset of a company, you understand, you first pay the creditors, first pay all the debts, first pay if there is any charge, any bond, anything, any debt, you will first of all pay everybody first. So it is remaining money that they have, they will not share among the shareholders. So the shareholders are the risk takers. So in areas where a director does not have a stake, he's not investing, it's easier for him to not do the business anyhow and just go.
Yeah, that is true.
So, and because they also understand that their personal property cannot be attached to whatever because of the legal structure of a company limited by shares, they can just mismanage. So it's to avoid mismanagement, to avoid to ensure transparency, to mitigate risks. That is why we put the corporate governance in place. Talk about board and board structure. You look at your board. So what should they consider? Consider your board structure. Who are the members of your board? The Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance of 2018. We also have Code of Corporate Governance for specific regulations, like SEC has its own code of corporate governance. But the general one is Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018 that is implemented by the Federal Reporting Council. So, what do you want to look at your board structure? Do you have enough? The people in the board, do they have the requisite skill and the expertise to ensure a smooth running of the business? So when you are picking your board members, you need to look at expertise. We need to look at the experience. And your board should include executive directors, non-executive directors, independent non-executive directors. Independent non-executive directors are directors that do not have a stake in the company. They don't have to 0.1% stake in the company. They don't have interest. They're not doing business in the company. So they are independent. So we believe that they can give an honest opinion about the business. So you see, corporate governance is about like governance,
yes,
the rules, the procedures to follow. So you look at that. You look at inclusion. Then you talk about the duties of each of the officers, the chairman, the chief executive director. Then you talk about risk management. You talk about, so those are the things that you consider in corporate governance. What are the policies that you are putting in place? Talk about transparency. Recently, the Nigeria Exchange Limited indicted 30 quoted companies for breach of corporate governance in respect of filing their financial statements. Why do they file their financial statement? Because once you are listed, you're a public company. Your financial statement needs to be published so that everybody can see how the business is doing. So sometimes they call something window dressing. You package the financial statements so that you now make people to see that, oh, maybe are we making loss or not? So it is the financial statement that you are supposed to. The financial statement helps investors to know whether they should invest in the business or not. So it's part of a requirement that they are supposed to publish their financial statement every quarterly and yearly. So like 30 quoted companies, they breached it as I last year November, and they were fined millions of naira. The Nigeria Exchange Limited did that. And I think that there was a time I did a video on it on YouTube. It was this Sterling Bank that they changed their board of directors. One of the reasons was failure, not compliance with corporate governance code. So it can affect if you don't comply with the something about the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018 is that they just tell you that this is the advice, this is what you should do. Then you can now align it to suit your own specific company or your specific business. We talk about whistleblowing policy. How can you? Yes, we talk about sustainability. Before you replace a director or somebody, you must be preparing somebody else. Succession program. Yes.
Yeah.
Succession program. You need to consider a lot of things. What about corporate social responsibility? Yeah, environmental and social governance. You have to put it into consideration. There is something they said the goal of the shareholder is to maximize profits. That will tell us in corporate financial management. But the company secretary is the conscience of the company. So, in your bid to maximize profits, you might close your eyes to some certain things like corporate social responsibility. Let's say you have an oil company now, and the oil company is polluting that community. You close your eyes because you are making money. But but as the company secretary or the principal of corporate governance, you have to the community you are working in is also a stakeholder. You have to consider them when you are making. So don't allow your drive to make profits cover your eyes. So that's I think that you need to look at in corporate governance. And if you don't comply, penalty is coming for you.
You've mentioned a lot in the aspect of compliance. You've mentioned a lot in the aspect of data protection, majorly inside corporate governance as well. So this is a lot of things, right? So I want to know, how do you keep up to date with all of the latest developments and trends in tech law, corporate governance, and all of those things?
So what I believe, what I've come to learn is that how do you prepare for the unexpected is by developing yourself. Right?
Correct.
And I have a phobia. The phobia is being met unprepared. Like maybe you ask me a question and I'm not able to give answer to it, or maybe a client does come in, except if it's on my area of practice, And one of the ways to prepare for the unexpected is to keep developing yourself. And that's why I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my place of development. I read I follow industry leaders. I subscribe to their newsletters. So it's not every time I have all the time to read. So when you follow industry leaders, when there is a new law, they talk about it, you read the articles, I read their laws, you get it. So I subscribe to their newsletter. So they want to also inform their own clients, but they don't know that I'm not their client. I'm learning from them. That's
running.
Yes. I also follow other professionals, then follow regulators, follow NDIC. So when they issue a guideline, you know it. So when you're on LinkedIn, for instance, LinkedIn is for professionals. When you're on LinkedIn, you follow a lot of people. Before when you go there, you see one article, you see this person writing on this, you read it. Oh, this is a new law. You read it. Oh, this, you read it. So that's how I stay. And then I attend seminars and I take paid courses. I do paid courses and I take courses that will advance me.
I respect people who have a knack for consistent self-development. Those kind of people, they are very hard to catch up with. Very, very hard to catch up with. Because how do you belong to an industry, or you are a professional in a specific field, and you are not consistently learning, consistently getting better, believing that, okay, I know all of these things, because there's new laws coming out. There's new innovative ways to do things. There's new better ways to actually get things done. So how do you become efficient, proactive, and a person who is driven by results, by continuous learning and self-development? So this is me just saying, I commend you for your consistent growth with focusing on learning all of the time, right? So
Thank you very
in all of the practices you have, in all of the things that you've done for businesses and people, organizations, you probably would have success stories, right? You have some achievements that you've had with the services you render to all of these companies and organizations and people. Could you share a memorable success story that you are most proud of?
That I'm most proud of. Okay, so like I said, I will one thing that is important is keep journaling. It's good to journal your success. First off, let's say you are incorporating companies for people and they incorporate their company. They're always excited. Wow, the Lord, thank you very much. But there's this one, a particular company I was consulting for, they were in a meeting with a proposed partner that they wanted to integrate the API. And because they want to comply, because when you have regulatory obligation, you have an obligation under the law to ensure a certain compliance. It's not just about getting people, onboarding people to do your business. There's some things that are expected of you. So they had to meet our team and all that. So we gave them our website. So when they went, give them the website, it was an online call. And I think I was off. Then I came back. Then the guy was like, our founder was like, where are you? They just press compliance so that when they go to the website, they saw the terms of use. They saw this. I was happy. You know why I was happy? Because the compliment was coming from somebody outside the team. Somebody that is not like, it's not somebody that I know. Like somebody that wants to work with us. So I was happy. I was like, thank God, somebody actually recognize what it makes sense, because then even if people in your team do not believe that you're actually working, and there's somebody outside that, let's say, a bigger company that they already have structure and everything, and we were trying to make them see why they should approve us to integrate the API into our system, and they're saying that yes, they like what they see, they like what they see. It's a good one for me.
What exactly do you do for fun? What do you do for fun? All of these things, there's a lot of things that you are involved in. What exactly do you do for fun?
Okay, so I love going out, right? But I don't really have the time to always go out. But like most of the times when I have time to go out is during December period, where that's festive period, or maybe holidays, you go out with friends, you chill out. In fact, I just discovered that there was a time I was a little bit depressed, but then I just went out with friends and I started jumping, dancing, and I discovered that yes, there is something like going out. And I watch movies. I watch movies a lot. So when I'm just tired, I don't want to think too much about Nigeria problem. The problem in Nigeria. Yes, I watch movies and then I read. So that I think I do for fun. I go out.
Based on your experience, what advice do you have for startups and companies in a few words?
Okay, we have said a lot. Everything we have said is like advice, but I won't say that you cannot take my advice from this thing. And if you want advice, you need to meet a lawyer and they will give you personalized advice. So they should prioritize legal compliance, and they should engage the service of a lawyer to help them navigate the tech tech landscape or the startup landscape. So you engage a lawyer every part of the way. See it as important. Prevention is better than cure. Don't wait till something happens. And then now there will not be difficulty to prove. You now start proving. Now, and in fact, it's draining for me. It's draining. Like, I pity because you waste your resources, you waste your time, and it's sometimes you might not get, you might not, if you are involved in alternative dispute like mediation, that's why you encourage people for mediation, include it in their clauses, agreements. Instead of what's going to court, let's go for mediation. In mediation, both parties can reach a compromise, right? But in litigation, you have to prove your case and the court will give you judgment. So take legal compliance seriously. Take proactive. So before you take a step, consider the legal implication of that step. Engage the service of the lawyer. So it's better don't underestimate or don't undermine the importance of legal advisory in your business. It's very important. So you see legal advisory service compliance as an insurance against legal pitfalls that might lead to loss, asset loss, that might lead to legal liability, lead to damages, lead to regulatory penalty. Sometimes it can lead to them revoking your license.
Yes. That's so true. And that's the best way to even explain it. That's your insurance. So what books could you share to the audience that has changed your life over the years?
This book, Starting Your Own Business, The Good, the Bad, and the Unexpected by David Lester, is a good book if you want to start your own business. It's a in fact, I remember when I read that book, I still wanted to do something about business, and I started applying the principles I learned in that book. I have Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. We have Atomic Habits by James Clear. One of the things I took out from Atomic Habits, I'm still reading it though, talk about reaching your plateau of latent potential. Talks about being consistent. It says that when you are doing something and you're not seeing the result, it doesn't mean that the what you are doing is not having effect, but you have not gotten to the plateau of latent potential where it will explode.
Coming to the end of this conversation, I want to read out this quote to you because of the way you've led yourself to self-discovery, which you're still learning self-discovery to discover yourself.
Sure.
It is still learning in process. So it says that when you can't find someone to follow, you have to find a way to lead by example, which was said by Roxanne Gay. And this is because of your resilience and your consistency with the knack for learning, your consistency with the love for growth, the love and the passion that you have for helping other people, leading yourself to be a better example for others, such that you could help other people to be able to lead themselves. Because leadership starts from leading yourself, actually. Exactly. It also starts with the act of service to yourself and people, right? So this is me saying that thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being the leader that you are to yourself and every other person that you've led along the way. Thank you for the good work that you're doing to help businesses to stand on their feet and to get prepared for challenges and to mitigate risk as well. Thank you for not letting businesses to collapse.
Thank you for having me. It has also led me to a journey of discovery, like answering your questions, and it's also inspiring me to work harder. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the time.